Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Stephen O'Bent, he, him pronouns. I am a composer, conductor, trombonist, singer, and relevantly to tonight, I have shared an office with Brian Schmidt over at DigiPen for 9 years and gotten to know him, and so I get the chance to interview him tonight about some moments in game audio music history. Are we getting it? Nope, that was something else. Great.
Oh. Hello. Oh, that works. Good.
Excellent.
I can always just hold the mic up to my PC speaker, too.
Right. That is a way. And our featured panelist tonight is Brian Schmidt. Brian is the composer of over 100 game titles.
120,
approximately 120, more than 100 for sure. Hard to know exactly how many. Been working in the game audio industry since 1987 and had a renaissance, is that fair to say, in the early 90s with 16-bit audio? I think maybe your most productive era?
Yeah, that was probably my most prolific.
Highest output.
Highest output era, yeah.
And so we're going to get a chance to hear from Brian about what that was like working in the industry then and some of the technical details about what it was like to be a composer, sound designer in the 16-bit era. Brian, any general introduction you want to give before I start asking you questions?
Sure, yeah. I started in 1987. I got lucky enough to get hired into Williams Electronic Games, where I just learned a ton. The manufacturer of pinball machines. I love playing pinball. I played pinball as a kid. My mom got really mad at me for wasting all my allowance playing pinball. I don't blame her. She didn't know it was job training. But so yeah, I was there.
I told you that was going to happen.
Let me turn down.
Will it happen a second time? That I can't tell you. Yay! Can we thank you for our volunteer staff getting the sound working?
Speaking of 16-bit era.
16-bit.
Yeah.
So, Brian, what is the 16-bit era? Is that the same thing as chiptunes?
It kind of is, and it kind of isn't. I think when people think chiptunes, they're really thinking of what is sort of the SID chip era and the NES era. And if I say SID chip, do people know what that means? Raise your hand if you have no idea what a SID chip is. Don't be shy. I just need to. Okay. That was a sound chip in the Commodore 64. And also the NES. Also, if somebody could pull the door shut, that would be awesome.
Thank you.
So, again, when we think of chiptunes, for the most part, people are thinking of the iconic SID chip or like NES, the original Super Nintendo sounds. And that was characterized by a couple of main things. One of which is my mega pet peeve about 8-bit audio and what that means. How many people sort of have a vague notion of what digital audio is about with like 8-bit audio and 16-bit audio? 8-bit chiptune has nothing to do with that. The 8-bit sound has nothing to do with how many bits the digital audio file has. It refers to the number of bits in the microprocessor of the game systems at the time, which were 8-bit microprocessors. And that means they could process 8 bits of data at a time. Today, your phone can do 128 bits at a time. Your PC can do 64, 128. But those early microprocessors that drove the video game, nothing to do with audio, operated on 8-bit data. And that's what 8-bit audio is. It has people like, oh, I want to make it sound like the Nintendo. I'm going to bit crush it down. It's like you're just doing the wrong thing. So the SID chip and the NES were both kind of similar in that, sorry, my phone is ringing and it's annoying me. I silenced it, but it's ringing, and I can't talk to him now.
You want me to take it?
No, it's okay. Sorry, Brian is on a panel at the moment. So one was very limited polyphony. These things could only make 3, 4, maybe 5 concurrent sounds. So it's just like writing for a string quartet, right? You've only got 4 instruments, or brass quintet.
Yeah,
You've only got no double stops.
Yeah, no double stops allowed.
So you only got 3 to 5 notes you can play. But the main thing was the waveforms used. They were very simple waveforms, and they were like a triangle wave. Is literally, if you put it on an oscilloscope, it looks like a triangle. A sawtooth wave goes up, and then it instantly goes down. Then it goes up, and instantly goes down. It looks like a sawtooth. That's why it's called a sawtooth wave. And those waves happen to be extremely easy to compute. Like, it takes very little computer hardware to generate those kind of waves. And so that's why those simple waveforms. Square waves is very simple. Square wave is just whoop. Oh, sorry. It goes up, across, down, across, up, across. Really easy to compute. And there were also some analog filters that they put on the output of the chips. And it's really that waveform, the filtered sawtooth waveform, that is kind of the iconic chip sound. I think it's very, very limited palette. And the things that like Rob Hubbard could do with that SID chip were just friggin' amazing, how he could get such amazing sounds. I had the great fortune of working with Rob on Desert Strike. That's how I met Rob. I was a consultant for EA. He was an employee at EA. And we kind of split up the music for Desert Strike. And so that's what the chiptune era really is. And if you go to a chiptune concert, that's the kind of waveforms. If you put them in an analyzer, that's what we'd be hearing. When the next generation of game consoles hit, like the Sega Genesis, that used a completely different technology. We had a little bit, compute was still really, really difficult. We couldn't get a lot of compute cycles. And we had to figure out how can we make things that sound cooler than just triangle waves and square waves with a filter. And it turns out that in the late 70s, a professor at Stanford University named John Chowning invented a new synthesis technique. Synthesis was called FM. Through Stanford, licensed it to Yamaha, which first shipped it commercially in 1983 in the DX7. If anybody has heard the Taco Bell, heard a Taco Bell commercial, the dong, that is a stock patch on the DX7. Some AFFM musician, dong, and got royalties for a long time.
Nice.
So this technology was really cool. And in fact, it was so revolutionary. It almost feels like there was a law passed by Congress in like 1984 that all pop tunes must use the DX7.
It's mandated. Yeah.
I think
Reagan was a big fan.
I think that was it.
Yep.
And actually, it was at the time, until about 10 years ago, it was Stanford's second most profitable patent ever. The first was the birth control pill, and the second was FM synthesis. And Yamaha had a monopoly on the market because of their license to deal with patent, and they created chips to go into smaller synthesizers. There was a baby brother to the DX7 called the DX9. Still used FM, but it was a cheaper chip. And it's that technology that they put into some other kinds of chips that made it into PC sound cards. It was designed into the Sega Genesis, and it became almost overnight one of the de facto arcade sound synthesis mechanisms. First put into Marble Madness by the programmer Mark Cherney, who, I don't know if anybody know that name, he is Mr. PlayStation. He designed the PlayStation 5. And the unfortunately late Brad Fuller, who composed the amazing music for Marble Madness, the first time an arcade game was able to use the FM synthesis in an arcade game. And the nice thing about that was one of the defining characteristics of the 90s sound, and actually 90s game development in general, was, again, trying to fight against two things. There was very little CPU power. It's amazing that they could do the things that they did. The other thing that was really precious was memory. In the late 80s, early 90s, we measured game audio footprints in tens of kilobytes. Crueball, the sound check sound that blasted all our ears out. The entire video game was 256 kilobytes, and the sound footprint was 32 kilobytes. And I had to write, I think there's 12 different pieces of music to cover the different states and so on. So memory was exceedingly precious. And the cool thing that the FM synthesis technology did was, if I have a digital wave file, now we are talking about regular old digital audio. There's something called the sampling rate. Does that sound familiar to people? Right? The Nyquist theorem states that if I want to represent a frequency f, I have to sample it. I have to sample an audio signal at least 2f, twice the frequency. Humans can hear up to about 20,000 hertz. That's why the podcast is named that. And that means that we need to sample sound to fully cover the full range of human hearing at least about 40,000 hertz. And the standards we've kind of came up to, which there's a really nerdy excuse for, 44.1 kilohertz, that's the compact disc rate. 48 is kind of the standard now. But that means that 1 second of 8-bit audio would take 44 kilobytes, which isn't going to work when the entire memory footprint for your audio budget is 35 or 40 or 50 kilobytes. So instead of using waveforms, the FM synthesis lets us define a custom unique patch for only about 28 bytes. So all of the instruments in this that's a weird one to start in the middle of. Here's another one. This is FM synthesis again.
Lion Man defeats the Balrog.
So except for the snare drum and the kick drum, all of the instruments are FM here. Yes, I've listened to a little ELP in my life.
Free the Titans.
So that's from a game called Swords of Fury, and Stemage did an amazing cover of that about 5 or 6 years ago. It just totally blows me away. But again, the nice thing is that now we could have all these different kinds of cool timbres and only use a very little bit of memory. Whereas if I wanted to, let's say, record a trumpet note, I can record a little bit of a trumpet note and not have much room for other else. So again, if I have like a quarter second of a trumpet sound that's going to be my trumpet patch, I've now used up 10 kilobytes of my 35, 40 kilobytes of memory just in that trumpet sound.
Such a good trumpet note, though.
Actually, no, it wasn't, because it still sucks.
Also still not good.
These days, a trumpet patch would be 150 megabytes.
Yeah.
And so that's what we mean by the chip, the sort of 16-bit era, is it's still technically chiptunes in that the chiptune is defined by the music is generated and synthesized in real time as the game is playing. We're not pre-recording a bunch of wave file. I don't go record the Helldiver score and then bring it into the game. I have to have the score. I have to have a list of notes, and we called them note lists. In a brilliant.
How'd you come up with that?
It was tough. Yeah. And so you literally have note by note what scores are, and there would be some custom software that would be written for a little custom microprocessor that translated these notes and read them in real time, and then translated them into synthesizer commands to change the patch or play a D sharp above C and play it at this volume level and so on. So that's kind of what chiptune is.
Sorry, is that note list what you were pulling when we were working on the Desert Strike arrangement? There was like a...
Yes, I actually found the original note list. I had archived it in an ARC file. Has anybody heard of an ARC file? I had forgotten they existed until I pulled it off the archive, and it's like, shit, how am I going to unzip this?
Yeah.
I had to find an internet thing that would translate an ARC file to zip. So I can show you what those note lists look like, and I'm going to try to do something that will look almost real time. So this is literally,
Behold, sheet music.
this is the sheet music for Desert Strike. So the very beginning goes and it goes sort of a gliss. That's this part here. And if you come to the concert tomorrow, you will hear that.
You can hear Brian conducting a live orchestra version of this.
Yeah. So I'm going to play the music and see if I can properly follow along. Here. I'm going to start this again. I practiced it, I promise. I'll make sure I'm in the right spot here.
So for context, while he's finding that, so I got to arrange for orchestra some of this music that Brian's talking about. And when we were working on this arrangement, he went, I think you got one of those notes wrong, because I was transcribing from a YouTube video as, just the audio somebody had uploaded. And Brian went, I'm pretty sure it actually goes F and then G before it resolves to the G. And I was like, I'm not hearing that. And that's when I got this file.
Oh.
Which is hard to argue with.
Oh, shoot.
Great question. The concert tomorrow with the MAGFest Community Orchestra is at 10 a.m. in the atrium by the fountain. There's not a lot of great audience spots, but you'll be able to hear it from basically anywhere in the atrium. It'll be very cool and very loud. It's about 350 trombones. No, 350 total, but I feel like so many of them are trombones. And I'm a trombonist, and even I think there's too many trombones. So many flutes.
Oh, man. Well, so here's the drum part, which is basically kick, snare, but I've got a little flam on the snare here. So the way I would work is I would write my music out in manuscript paper, because I write better in manuscript paper than I do on keyboard. And plus,
So you're talking like five traditional music notation on manuscript paper, and then translate what you had written on that into this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's cumbersome because every note is a line. 30 is an eighth note. Ring holds a note out. This is A sharp above middle C, A above middle C, dotted quarter note. So it seems really cumbersome, but I got to the point where I could just kind of touch type it and look at my score.
Cool. Next year, let's pitch a panel for sight reading ensemble. Bring your instrument, and we're going to read off of the note list. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Now, is it a matter of key or a matter of language that you probably only put sharps and there are no flats?
I think,
Great question.
I don't recall off the top of my head. I think it's weird because I consider this piece in G minor, so it'd be a B flat.
Exactly.
I think it's because I just didn't want to go to the headache of having to have both A sharp and B flat. So there might be some weird C syntax thing about it too. So this gets actually compiled down to machine code, which then gets linked in with the rest of the game, and that's how it gets played back. Okay, that show and tell didn't work quite as expected, but
It's still pretty interesting to see that.
Yeah.
though. I don't know.
yeah, you can kind of see the da 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 da.
See, we're very good at sight reading this.
Yeah. I actually had to get to the point where I could actually start writing directly in this instead of.
Instead of starting on a manuscript paper, where you have the idea in your head, and
I
you
had
could,
the idea in my head.
you had the fluency
yeah.
enough on the note list.
Yeah, I got tired. I'd get impatient, or I'd be on a deadline or something like that.
And sorry, just to zoom out, which console is this that you're working for?
This is for the Sega Genesis, and I had a very so I wrote a system that part of it was in C, and then depending upon what console it was, I had a bunch of assembly files. So it was the same core sound system for Genesis, 2 different arcade systems, at one point NES, and at one point this system got ported to the Xbox, which is what drives the boot sound.
Cool.
Which is a separate story.
Do you want to share that story? Is that too jumpy aroundy?
That's a little bit jumpy around it, yeah. So anyway, so that's what the process basically was, is that I write the music, transcribe it into these various formats, and then we'd compile it on a high-tech 286 computer, which had 640K of memory. It did have a floppy drive, and we actually had the expensive model that had a 20 megabyte hard drive.
How much did one of those go for at the
This
time?
is probably
do you
about
remember?
$4,000.
$4,000 machine right there.
$4,000 in 1987.
Yeah.
It's about $10,000.
$10,000 of today dollars.
So this was provided for me at Williams when I was there. Monochrome graphics, Hercules graphics. So it's pretty primitive stuff. And the way that we worked is, again, it's not like it's weird because the music doesn't exist until it's played in the game. And the game only runs off these printed circuit boards that are in the game, whether it's in the game console or in an arcade cabinet. And either way, in that day, the sound data, or the whole game, was contained in something that looked like this. This is called an EEPROM. The ROM stands for read-only memory, so it's where we could put data and code, like the score to Desert Strike would go as binary numbers into something that looks like this. The P means programmable, meaning that we could, on our desk, program it, so we could burn, we called it burning the EEPROM. And the E stands for erasable, means we can reuse them. So that's what the little window here is. We used to be able to stick this chip in, a little thing that looks almost like a toaster, and that would erase whatever was on it. And so and this is what so we took it in this to write the data to it. So think of it as writing to your floppy drive, and this is your floppy drive, except it takes 35 minutes to write data to the floppy drive, and to erase it was about 45 minutes. So we always had a lot of these around, and literally it means if I wanted to change the volume of the snare, I had to recompile the note list, burn a new EEPROM, go get some coffee, take the EEPROM out, put it in the game, and now listen to the game with my snare volume tweaked a little bit. And it really had a big impact on stuff, because any sound designer working today will tell you that iteration is the most important thing in getting stuff good. And if your iteration time is not good, that's a problem. And here the iteration time is typically 45 minutes or an hour. And this 2 years before I got there, when they were doing games like Defender, the game programmer would have to wait an hour to make a change, and it would take 45 minutes to compile the code for that new change. So it was a very, very different kind of environment. It was, sort of very slow, and you became very deliberate. You made a lengthy list of the changes you want to make, and then made them all, hope you didn't screw something up, recompile, burn a new EEPROM, put it in the game, and listen to it again.
What did you do for the 35 minutes you were waiting?
Other stuff, just go either write other cues
Write
on
more,
paper,
yeah.
which does not have a latency of 45 minutes.
Very quick return on the
Or go
paper.
get coffee, or go play pinball.
Yeah.
For the first couple
I
of years.
knew it was go play pinball.
Yeah.
I knew that was the answer.
The cafeteria had a bunch of pinball machines, and so I was like a kid in a candy shop when I was there. And so the back of the pinball machine at that point looked like this. These days, this is down to a single circuit board. But this is the main CPU board, and then this is the main sound board. So all of the sound coming out of like Black Knight 2000 came from this. So Yeah, I don't have any presentation made. I just have a bunch of random pieces of slides that I thought might be useful.
Yeah, do you want to tell us more about Black Knight 2000?
Yeah, so
What's
so
that? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, no. What was your question on Black Knight 2000?
It was just talk about it.
Oh, yeah. So Black Knight 2000 was, first of all, super fun for me because one of my favorite pinball machines when I was a pinball fan was Black Knight. I worked at an amusement park for a summer playing bass, and it was right next to an arcade, and I got to be good friends with the arcade owner who'd load me up on Black Knight credits if it wasn't busy. And there was actually one in the employee lounge as well that I freely paid money into, even knowing I could play it for free the next morning. And so the fact that I was able to then work on the sequel with the game designer Steve Ritchie was pretty amazing. And you can see here that the main sound ROMs were pretty small. Steve really wanted this game to really have a lot of musical impact. Steve was a guitar player. Steve co-wrote the main theme. And so he managed to talk the company into having 4 sound chips for music. And if you look, there are 2 sound chips for the game and 4 for music. And the reason that's a big deal is because memory was expensive. Each of those ROM chips was about $5 or $6. It doesn't seem like a lot until you think about the companies making 100,000 games a year. So if you add a $5 chip, you've just cost the company $500,000 that year. And that actually is an interesting thing for just the history of video game creation and video game music in general is video games did not grow up, strangely enough, as an artistic medium. Companies did not think of themselves as intellectual property companies or media companies. They thought of themselves as manufacturers. Literally, I could walk down the hallway from my office and see a factory of 250 people with soldering irons and putting pinball machines together, wiring things, and so on. As even through the end of cartridges are things you manufacture. You have to have inventory. And so the mindset of what's a video game came from a manufacturing background. It didn't come from music or film. I think that's one of the reasons that things like credit for composers or all sorts of intellectual property issues. Grant Kirkhope, when they put DK Rap into the movie, every other composer for any of the music in that movie was listed at the end of the movie, but not Grant, because Nintendo's a manufacturer. So one of the interesting things with that was he really wanted a very powerful thing. He's kind of a metalhead, so he wants that sort of power stuff. So we worked on trying to get a good FM synthesis guitar, and we had written a custom little synthesis chip editor for the PC that let us tweak the parameters of the FM chip so we could listen to different things, hear different patches. He said he wanted it to sing. That's about kind of all he said. He said, I want a choir of Heavenly Angels, and I want to battle the Black Knight. That's kind of the yin-yang, good-bad thing. Mm-hmm. But again, the problem is that there's so little memory. We're always fighting memory anytime in any game through. Really wasn't until I'd say the PlayStation 2 era and the original Xbox that developers kind of could finally relax a little bit about memory. Everything else then was, how do I cram more content into memory? One thing that was cool is that he put this message into the manual saying that our studies have shown that loud Black Knight 2000 makes more money. So that was kind of his justification for the extra money that they would have to, or extra profit margin that Williams would lose by having all those, the extra sound chips on it. Volume should be turned enough so that all the effects are audible, so the player can hear everything. Doing this will also attract spectators and would-be players to the games when they can hear the remarkable music effects and vocals that are present.
That's the most respect I've ever seen a game developer show the sound designer composer.
Well, the main team of a pinball machine back then was really about 4 core people. The main designer, that was Steve Ritchie. The sound person was me. The artist was, oh shoot, I can picture him. The artist.
I cannot picture him.
I think his name is they used to put credits at the flippers. And then the programmer was this brand new programmer named Ed Boon. I don't know if that name sounds familiar. Yeah, after Black Knight, he decided to do video games, and he created Mortal Kombat, and has been doing Mortal Kombat since then. Doug Watson,
Doug
yes.
Watson.
Doug Watson
Thanks,
was the artist.
Google.
Thank you. Thank you, Google. So this is actually the original. This is the only thing I have really of Black Knight. I don't have any of the code, because that all was Property Williams. I suppose this technically is Property Williams too.
Don't tell him. Just don't
Yeah.
tell him.
They'll never find out. So yeah, I used to write stuff out on manuscript, and it's, it was not a fully faithful score. I knew how to take this and make it into a note list. I didn't need other people to be able to. And yeah, here's an example for the note list. And as I said, there were a lot of memory challenges. So we wanted the game to sing, and we had some lyrics. You got the power, you got the might. If you were at the concert 2 years ago, I lament and believe
Anybody
it was
there
not.
performing with the MAGFest Orchestra 2 years ago when we did
Yeah.
Black Knight 2000? What's up? Yep. I see you.
So there are a couple things in this clip. One is the melody of "You got the power." The first 3 words, it's "You got the." It's the same melody. It's the same words. So we actually only stored one version of it because memory is so precious. But then we had a separate recording of "power" and "might," and then we just stitched them together so that we didn't have to double the memory. And likewise, when I wrote the chorus, I know we wanted to have this singing, the pieces in E minor, and I knew if I had just kind of an ah on an E minor chord, I could write it in E minor, but then if I wanted to change, if I put a C in the bass, all of a sudden I'm a C major 7 with the same, EGB, same vocal sample. Then I go to a B, and now all of a sudden I've really got a 1-6-4. So I was able to multiply use the one E minor chord, and actually I used it in another place in the game too, in a different melody. But so that sounds kind of like this. You can hear both 3 uses of the "You got the" and also the E minor chord.
You got the power. You got the might.
No way.
Get ready for battle.
Give me your money.
Beat the Black Knight.
So we were doing tricks like that, like all over the place. And there was,
That's just good voice leading anyway. I mean, honestly, keeping those chords sound steady.
Yeah. And there's one other example about memory that I want to show you, and this is from a different game. This is from Banzai Run. So Banzai Run, we were very late in development, and I learned that Stemage and his band
Arcadians.
Arcadians was
The
playing
Arcadians in their show
music from
tomorrow.
Banzai
we
Run in the
played
show
it.
tomorrow, yeah. So in this game, you have to sort of beat 4 different motorcyclists. And they've Redhead, Bluebeard, Yellow Belly, Green Machine. And the idea is that when you finish the targets, it's going to say, "You've challenged Red Hot," or "You've challenged Green Machine," and that kind of sounded like this.
He's challenged Red Hot. He's going after Bluebeard.
Okay, pretty straightforward. And we'd mix it up, so it's the "You challenged" was separate from the Bluebeard, so it could be "You challenged Red Hot," "You challenged Bluebeard." But in late game testing, we found it was a little bit awkward the way the announcer worked, because he would say, He's challenged Red Hot. He's challenged Bluebeard. But if you made the last red target and then immediately hit the last blue target or the last yellow target, it would interrupt itself. So he fixed that by sequencing them. And then it said, so instead of saying, you've challenged Red, you've challenged Bluebeard, which didn't work, it was, you've challenged Red Hot, he's going after Bluebeard. And that still seemed weird. So the designer, this was Larry DeMar, was like, can we like just say he's, challenged Red Hot and Bluebeard? And the problem is that we were almost in production. Every last byte of memory was used. But we really wanted to say he's challenged Red Hot and Bluebeard. If they both come very quickly one after another, because that's what an announcer would say. So we wanted it to do this.
He's challenged Red Hot and Bluebeard.
So the problem was that we had zero memory. We didn't have the word and. We couldn't record the word and. It wouldn't fit. So what we did is that we looked at the very beginning of the game,
Welcome, race fans, to Banzai Run.
where it says, "Welcome, race fans, to Banzai Run."
You found it?
You see
Did
where I'm
find it?
going.
He's going after Red Hot and Bluebeard.
Let's listen again.
Red Hot and Bluebeard. Red Hot and Bluebeard. Fans to Banzai. Fans to Banzai.
So what is that? Welcome, race fans, to Banzai Run. There's the word fans. There's the "and" of the word fans. That's how we stitch together Red Hot and Bluebeard.
That's efficiency.
And this is what life was like doing sounds in the 8-bit. It's all about how do we have a crazy way of, right? It always starts with a creative challenge, right? What isn't working creatively and we want it to work better? How the heck are we going to make this thing make that? And again, nobody did this better than Rob Hubbard on the SID chip. But in arcade games through, whether you're doing pinball machines or arcade games or Super Nintendo games or Genesis games, it's kind of all different modes of the same thing. And I had it fortunate in that we were the every one of the composers at Williams was a assembly language programmer. Chris Granner was a very, very good programmer. Bill Parad, very, very good programmer. Dan Fortin, who of course he just retired, he continued with Williams, and he was one of the last two people to work on the original Mortal Kombat that was still working on until he retired last year. Also, very technical, very, very good programmer. So it allowed us to do these kinds of things where otherwise we'd have to talk a game programmer into trying to do it, and it would never really get on anybody's radar.
Yeah, 10 minutes left.
Oh, wow, okay.
I know.
Where'd the time go?
Time goes by quickly. So we have about 10 minutes left, and I think, Brian, if it's all right, we might move on to questions.
Yeah.
If folks have anything you want to know about his career. Yeah.
That's very cool. Oh, it's not, the WAV file is not reused, no, as far as I know. But it's same voice, it's Steve, yeah. Yes, yeah. Yeah, Steve just likes doing those kinds of voices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good ear on that one. Yeah. And I'm going to repeat the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question was, FM synthesis, famously complicated now, presumably more challenging then. What did you do to familiarize yourself and improve your skills with it?
It's coincidentally, so I started in academic computer music, right? I went to school, I thought I was going to be a tuba major. Random coincidence, my sophomore year, the School of Music got a big grant to study 3D hearing, like HRTF stuff. And they built from scratch a computer music lab. And so I got very heavily into the academic computer music. And at the time, again, this was 1982, the DX7 hadn't been released yet, but FM synthesis was a product of academia, and so it was something that, coincidentally, Chris Granner had studied, and I had studied, and Dan Forden had studied, and Bill Perrott had studied. It didn't really help us make sounds for it, but we understood the theory really, really well. We did, one of the first things that I did when we got there, though, was try to write an editor for the Yamaha synthesis chip that was in the pinball machines. And for that, I managed to do something where we could imagine a text-only interface with a lot of numbers on it, but every one of the FM parameters, like the envelope for the oscillators and stuff like that, could be tweaked on the screen, and then it was immediately sent to the pinball machine. So I could have a piece of music playing, like my Swords of Fury music playing. I could bring up the Yamaha voice editor, and then by tweaking numbers on the screen, I could actually change the patch in real time as I was hearing it. And it's just lots of trial and error with FM. FM is notoriously unintuitive. It's very, very powerful, but it's massively. There were people who were like doing PhD dissertations on trying to find some way of mapping perceptual parameters easily to FM parameters, and it's still, yeah. I don't think even ML would, because it's so, it doesn't fit patterns. Yeah, that was a good question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I parsed that.
Yeah.
First of all, again, at the time, for the most part, game composers and sound designers were employees of companies. I was an employee of Williams. There were almost no game audio freelancers at the time. So what that meant is that you were assigned on a project, and I was assigned Black Knight 2000, and I was assigned Banzai Run. And that really did mean that you lived your life with that game for, at Williams it was like 9 months. Data East, it was way shorter than that. But it did mean that you just immersed yourself in the game, and so you're always thinking, what can I do sonically to make the game more fun, right? We want to inform the player that they've done something. We want to reward them, in a fun sonic way. We want to attract other people to the game. And do it in a cool aesthetic way. So there wasn't like a separate process. It was like, oh, I need, on Banzai Run, there's a thing where once you get to the upper playfield, where every time you hit a target, the music transposes up a half step. And I just thought, oh, at this part of the game, I think it'd be cool if every time you hit a target, the music transposed up a half step. So we had to write some code that let us make it so that when you hit a target, the sound system could be told, whatever you're doing now, go up a half step. And then there was a little transition piece musically that would go from wherever you happen to be in that sequence of half steps, then that many down again to get back to the main theme, which was in a set key. And that the need for that didn't exist until I saw that game, and it's like, oh, this game seems like it should have a bump up a half step every time you hit this particular target. It's a weird pinball machine. It's got a flat play field and it's got a play field in the back glass. And it was when you were up here that we did that. So
And it had an interactive score, I just learned.
we were doing shit.
Yeah.
We were doing interactive shit in 1987 that people thought was brand new 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So Black Knight 2000, and actually before that. So in Taxi, Chris Granner was like, oh, when the ball goes down, I didn't do Taxi, Chris did. When the ball goes down the return lane to the flipper, I want a little, the theme is Taxi, so I want a little car horn, da-da-da-da-da, or whatever, play. But he's like, I don't know what chords are in the music. Well, to solve that, we wrote some code that lets the sound effects look at whatever chord the music is playing and then adjust the transposition of the sound effect to match the underlying key. And in Black Knight 2000, same thing. It's like there's a big, long ball lock sound. It's go, boom. But you don't want the boom to be on a D if the bass of the music is an E. So we just made sure that we made our system such that that particular sound effect, because of the particulars for that sound, which is you make a shot and the ball goes over what's called a rollover target. So it's not when you hit and you see it hit, but it's going through a little lane and it rolls over a target, so I know it went through that lane. So I didn't care exactly where the sound started, but I wanted to end on a beat. So it says, oh, when it hits this target, what's the chord of the music? Okay, let me start playing this such that the final note will be whatever chord I'm on, and let me delay its start such that it won't hit that bum until a musical beat. And then, oh, by the way, if in the middle of playing that sound effect the chord happens to change, the sound effect itself would suddenly transpose itself back down to it. So it's, again, when you work that closely on a game and you're not, one of the things I love being a freelancer. I was a freelancer most of my career, but the one thing I didn't like was that those kind of moments don't happen where you're so focused on one game. And another great moment of that is Toasty. Everybody knows Toasty? Toasty! That's only because Dan just happened to play that game over and over in Ed's game and said it one time. And all of a sudden it was in the game. But yeah, so we were doing all these interactive music things. Once you put a quarter in Black Knight 2000, the beat never stops. And there are times where the game actually waits for the music to hit either a 2-beat boundary or a 1-beat boundary before it continues, because they really, really wanted that continuity of beat. And that happened because the designer, Steve Ritchie, and the programmer, Ed Boon, both really understood the power of sort of synchronizing the audio with the visuals.
Yeah.
Right. They both view Pinball Machine as a multimedia experience, and of course you want to have everything all synchronized. Even when the ball was over, the ball drain, the bonus count sequence was all in time with the music, and even the plunger that kicked the ball on the solenoid that kicked the ball onto the plunger for the next ball to start was also timed to the music. We wrote some code that the music CPU was sending constant beat messages to the game CPU, so it knew where these things were. But
I think we got time for one final question.
huh? Mark, yes, this was at Atari. Marble Madness was done at Atari, yeah. Oh, that's some pinball history that I don't know. Yeah, Atari was doing pinballs. In fact, Williams hired Steve Ritchie away from Atari. Yeah, that's... Now, Atari was kind of done by the time... when I got to Williams again, it was like June of '87. So they were hands down the world's leading manufacturer of pinballs. They own the market. But yeah, at the time, and that's why I guess they had discrete boards for stuff.
Cool. Well, I think we have to wrap it up here. But if you want to hear more of Brian Schmidt's music, you can come to the MAGFest Community Orchestra concert tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in the atrium. Brian will be conducting a medley of music you heard from there from Desert Strike and Jungle Strike that I arranged, so you don't have to say that.
Right. And we'll also be seeing a guest singer tomorrow.
And there may be a guest singer at the end of the set. It might be Rebecca Sugar, might be coming to sing with the orchestra. Maybe I'm not allowed to say that, but it's happening. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Appreciate y'all. Have a wonderful MAGFest.